Hello, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Laura Brittingham. I live in Millsboro, Delaware, and I'm a proud member of the Delaware Farm Bureau. I was asked today to share one of my family recipes, asparagus soup with drop dumplings, with all the members of the Farm Bureau and try to promote Delaware agriculture and products that are Delaware grown. So today we're going to be working in my kitchen at Brittingham Farms with some local Delaware asparagus and making a wonderful soup that I hope your family will enjoy. Our farm is located again in Millsboro, Delaware. It's in Sussex County. We are a grain farm. We also have Leicester long wools, which is a heritage breed sheep, and we've recently added lavender to our farm and going to be planning some agritourism events in the very near future. This soup recipe has been around for a very long time. I know it's about 100 years old. My grandfather, Herbert Miner, remembers eating this soup in his mother's kitchen, Bertha Miner. She was my great-grandmother. They lived in Dover. And it's funny about those old recipes because I feel like the older they are, the simpler they are to make, the fewer ingredients, and most of the time a little bit more healthy. So this recipe calls for very few ingredients. It's very simple to make. It usually takes about 20 minutes or less to make it. And it's our go-to for spring. And I've even served this as an appetizer before Easter dinner. It really is popular. So let's get started. To make this soup, you can have anywhere from really 1.5 pounds to 3 pounds of asparagus, depending on whether you want leftovers, how many people you're feeding. But buy your Delaware asparagus, wash it, and the other ingredients that you'll need are milk, a stick of butter, 2 eggs, a cup of flour, salt, pepper, onion powder if you choose to add that, and parsley, fresh hopefully, to garnish at the end. So super easy with ingredients, and we'll go through everything step by step now. So I have pre-washed my Delaware asparagus. This was purchased at the farmer's market. My grandmother, when I was a young girl learning how to cook with her, she always told me that if you get your asparagus out of the field or out of the garden and it feels gritty, maybe there was a rain right before the cutting, she said soak it briefly in a water vinegar mix, and that opens up the top and really does a good job of getting the grit out. So wash your asparagus very well, and then we're just going to snap our asparagus stems where they would naturally break off. We are not going to lay these out on the cutting board and cut the ends off with a knife. You will end up eating tough asparagus that way. So let it naturally break where it wants to. And we'll do a few more. Hopefully you've seen this. Just let it naturally break. The top part of the asparagus will be the most tender, and you'll want to throw the bottom part away because it tends to be a little bit more tough. So I will continue to make a pile of our good asparagus tips over here on the cutting board, and we'll keep on going. So now we're at the cutting board. We just want to make sure that we cut the asparagus into 1 to 2 inch lengths so that the asparagus is more bite size in our soup. And then you can start adding it into your soup pot. So again, we want to add just enough water to make sure that the asparagus is just covered. We don't want to do a whole lot extra. And now we're off to the drop dumplings. Okay, so now we have our asparagus cut into inch and a half pieces. They're in our soup pot. We have added water to our soup pot just to the very top of the asparagus, not a whole lot more. We want them barely covered. And now we're going to get our drop dumplings together. So we want 1 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of milk, 2 eggs, and some salt and pepper. And we're gonna stir them up quickly. So let's add our ingredients. Okay, so 1/2 cup of milk, 1 cup of flour, and 2 eggs. We take a fork and we stir this in until it makes a nice batter. And it feels kind of sticky. You know, we make chicken and dumplings all the time. That dough feels sticky too, but this is, you know, we're adding milk instead of water, so it feels a little bit more sticky, I think. But I just like to try to get all the lumps out with my fork, and then I'll grab a spoon and we'll go over to the stove and drop them in. It's a nice consistency, a little sticky. All right, so we're at the stove. We have just made our dumpling mix, and before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and salt and pepper the water that we have with the asparagus sitting in it. So just a good amount covering the asparagus with some sea salt and some pepper. And now we get our drop dumpling mix. And I'm going to switch over to a spoon and drop them in, just like it says. So we're going to take a little scoop and just drop them in on top of the asparagus so that they sit on top. We're not mixing them in. So a drop dumpling will just sit right on top. And we use our whole mixture. If you're making a big pot of this and you think that you'd like to double this part of the recipe, you can. Just make sure that you have enough room on the top. They sit on top and they cook on the top. Okay, we have not turned the heat on yet for this soup. We are still on a cold stove. Okay. And every little dumpling gets its own room. We just drop this right on top of the asparagus. It cooks on top of the water almost. All right, so now we're ready for heat. We're gonna go ahead and turn the stove on. This part of it, you can turn it on high. And we'll be right back as we watch it cook. So this has been cooking covered for about 7 or 8 minutes. I like to go through with my fork and test the asparagus. It's definitely getting soft now. I'll usually pull one out and set it aside for myself, let it cool, and taste it. I will also go through with my fork, or you can use a knife, and just kind of break up any of these dumplings. You can see how they really fill the pot, and they stay on top, and they have a tendency to want to grab each other. So just kind of keep going around the pot and breaking them into smaller bite-sized pieces so that every bite of soup gets a dumpling. And just keep going around your pot and breaking them up. You can also see like the water levels starting to go down. We're really getting close to adding our milk and butter, and then we will be done and ready to eat. So it's looking good. And again, try that asparagus. Make sure it's cooked through. You do not want to overcook this. You do not want your asparagus to be mushy, but you don't want it to be obviously still crunchy either. So we've been going about 7-8 minutes covered so far, and it's just about ready. So what we'll do now is I'm gonna turn the heat down a little bit. We're gonna be adding our milk and butter. We do not want to keep this boiling when we are adding milk. You can see here with the broth, it's just been cooked so far in salt and pepper. If you have more water than this, I have added too much water before when I've made this. I will take a coffee mug and dip a little bit out if I feel like there's a level of water that's too high. That's really gonna water down your flavor. But this is a good amount, so we're gonna keep going. So again, turn your heat down to low. We do not want milk boiling. At this point, we're just going to try to warm up the milk. So I get my carton of milk out. We like whole milk in our family. I can't imagine that this recipe would taste good with skim milk. I would not recommend it. So it takes a good amount, and it takes a good amount of butter. Again, it's a little bit of choice and preference here. I tend to like the whole stick. I will break it up and usually add the whole stick. Now my stick's been sitting here next to the hot stove, so it's definitely more than room temperature at this point, but we add our milk and our butter, and we are going to give it a stir. And now it's starting to look like soup. My kids love this soup. Don't be afraid to make it and try it. It really is very good, and I will leave the heat on low at this point because again, we've added the milk and we do not want this soup boiling. When I heat this up tomorrow for leftovers, again, you're gonna keep your temperature low and your lid off. We do not want milk boiling. So we're gonna let this sit for a little while. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I'm not gonna walk away from it. I have added a whole stick of butter. You don't have to. Also, if you love onion salt, this is where I usually add it in. I'm not gonna add it today. But I did a whole stick of butter and several cups of milk. And so you can just gauge how much milk you want in it, but the milk and the butter are what is gonna give us our flavor. All right, we're gonna let this sit, and well, I'll usually let it sit for about 10 minutes and then we'll serve it up. So the soup is done. All the flavors have had time to sit and rest together. The milk and the butter have made the flavor of the soup fantastic. It's all done. It's dipped up for the family, and we're gonna enjoy a bowl of Delaware asparagus soup. So I'll give you a quick peek at my bowl, and I did add some fresh parsley from the garden on the top, and we just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of our heart. Thank you for supporting Delaware Farm families. Thank you for supporting families like ours. Thank you for supporting Delaware grown produce, and thank you so much for supporting the Delaware Farm Bureau. We appreciate your support. See you again next time. Bye.